Hi. This is Benny
and Valerie.
And this is Wholehearted Living. Look at that. We're getting so good. And only 24 episodes, Iggy.
This is actually episode 31.
Oh
my gosh.
Look at us.
31 episodes.
That's awesome.
So we're really glad that you guys are listening. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something for all of our listeners right now, all of our watchers, is so one of our listeners, Marco Polo's me. I just thought of this.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So
and I just learned what Marco Polo was.
Yeah, that's right. So what we're going to do is we're going to say hello to her right now. That. So we are recording. Hello, Tamara.
Hi, Tamara. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for
faithful
listening.
Listener.
Yes. All right. Now go away. Just kidding. Anyway, well, you've had a week. Are you going to talk about it, or are we going to just pretend like it didn't happen?
Well, I like to pretend like it didn't happen, but I will talk about it. Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Of course you are.
We lost our Buttercup this week.
Yeah. And Buttercup, for those that aren't following, is her puppy.
My dog. We knew, I mean, it's been a few months where we've seen a decline, but it was like in the last few weeks where it was rapid declining. And then in the last week, it was like, whoa, this is happening.
Yeah.
And, I think I already shared this with you, Benny, but I haven't really shared it with anyone. I mean, everyone. I wasn't really sure I wanted to put her down because I was like really worried about if I was going to be presumptuous, but at the same time, I didn't want her to be living a life where she's like, oh my God, let me go.
That's the huge catch-22,
yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, I could either take her out of her misery, but then you're responsible. And is it too soon? How in the world do you know?
Yeah. I asked her so many times, are you in misery? And she didn't answer me. No, but, but anyway, so one morning I actually, she used to sleep in our bed. And one night I said, you know what? I don't want her sleeping in our bed because she's having a very hard time getting down the steps that we have going to the bed. And then once she gets off the steps, she can't get herself back up. So I said, I'm going to put her in her bed, let her sleep, get her all cozy in there. So she went to bed, no problem in there. She used to fight that if we ever tried it any other time. So at 2 a.m. I woke up, went down there, and I saw that she was just sitting up, staring. And I was like, oh my God, she's awake. So I picked her up, put her on my chest, and just laid with her on the couch. She just laid on my chest for like 4 hours, didn't budge. So anyway, I looked at Peter and I said, this is it. This is not, she was sitting up in her bed at 2 a.m. She actually had her head just laying against the girls, Mazzie and Marley's, my granddaughter's toy chest. And so she couldn't even hold her head up. She had it resting on that. So anyway, I said, this is it. I can't let her live like this anymore. We got to make the decision. Took her to 3 different vets that morning at 7 a.m. and none of them could see her. They were like, the doctor's out. The doctor's in surgery. Bring her back.
So when you say that, you were to put her down?
To put her down.
Okay.
We were going to, it was like the sign,
Yeah.
And and prior to that, I had been praying, Lord, please just let her fall asleep go in her sleep. I just want her to peacefully go in her home. And, so anyway, he brought her home, and then we were going to take her that night to a place that was open 24 hours. Ended up coming home from work, and poor thing had passed in her sleep, and she was just in her bed. And, part of me was so sad I wasn't there, but I also feel like, she wanted to go when no one was there, because she also left after Kylie left, which Kylie had an audition, and she said, before I left for my audition, she was laying in her bed and I pet her and she looked up at me and she was breathing and everything was fine. I mean, fine, so to speak.
Right. As fine as could be at that moment.
Yeah. So she left, and then somewhere between 12 and 2:45, she passed. And so I look at that sweet little Buttercup, not wanting to mess you up for your audition. She, because Kylie, I don't know how she would have auditioned knowing. You know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, so it's just been a week because
what's amazing about that, though? I really do think about, obviously you miss her, and I'm sorry for you guys. It's hard to, it's interesting because of the topic we're going to have in a second here. But I will say that dogs, even people, you've heard the stories of people who it's like someone, I've heard of this, where people with cancer who are fighting the cancer and fighting the cancer and fighting the cancer and they don't die, but family can totally see that they're in pain and they're hurting and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally the family says, it's okay.
Yes.
And then they go.
Yes.
Like practically immediately.
Exactly.
And so it's almost like, I mean, I know you say it tongue in cheek and, we really don't know.
Sure.
I'm certainly not a vet and I'm certainly
Sure.
not God to understand, but it's interesting because you really do kind of wonder if the dogs sense what's going on in the home and then they go, all right, it's time. This is it.
And the weirdest thing that I really believe, and I have to believe that because that's what makes me feel good about it. You know what I mean? But having her lay on my chest, she wasn't a dog. She sat on my lap. She was a total lap dog. But to put her up on my chest, you could tell she was just like, okay, let me down. Are you going to let me lie on your lap? Like, what are we doing here? You're like, she was very uptight on my chest. So for her to lay there for 4 hours and not move. And then I did, like I said, I was petting her and I was saying things like, sweetie, just go fall asleep and don't wake up. And she would look up at me, almost like, okay. And like, sorry. Just like, are you sure?
Yeah.
But I mean, I have to tell myself that's what she said.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah,
it's hard because you walk in the door and you expect, even right now coming over to your house, I got my stuff together and I'm, just like, okay, let me make sure that Buttercup's locked up. Let me make sure there's water. And I'm like, what am I thinking? Like, there's just so many habits,
right. For sure.
So anyway, that was a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Week before last, last week we had the car slam into our backyard and then this. And I'm just really glad January's over.
I get it. What a bitch. You get it? She's a girl dog. I should have done that joke a long time ago. My daughter's looking at me like I'm an idiot. It was really dumb, but it also made her stop crying. Not that I don't want you.
But
to cry,
that whole
but
topic
maybe
ties into. I mean, that whole story actually ties into the topic today because of what we were reading. And as I read through it through the week, I was like, I need to be grateful for things and not. And it's funny. We'll get into it. But what's funny? When Buttercup passed and I felt so sad and so hurt and brokenhearted, I thought to myself, God, would it have been better not to have her at all? So I don't feel this pain. And then I was reading this book and I was like, oh my God, no, it was. She brought me so much joy.
Interesting. So let us get into it. And you know what, folks, for those of you that might be listening for the very first time, or maybe you listened when we first started, we are, instead of doing the topics where we're switching back and forth, we're reading a book called The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Inviting you folks to read with us. I encourage you to go back. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 episodes to start the book with us. And so so what we did was we did a couple weeks on the introductory pages, which is really half of the book, quite frankly. And then she has 10 guideposts. And we're today going to talk about guidepost number 4. Last week we talked about guidepost number 3, which is cultivating a resilient spirit, letting go of numbing and powerlessness, which is great in terms of when you're struggling and then you just try to find some kind of vice often to try and cover up whatever it is that you're going through. And today's is guidepost number 4, cultivating gratitude and joy, letting go of scarcity and fear of the dark. I forgot to mention this. We had him talk for a second, but thank you, Izzy, for being here as well.
I was going to make sure we touched on him before we said goodbye because we missed it.
We missed it. So we'll just say that very quickly. And thank you again for being here and setting us up. By the way, this is our podcast room. She said she came over to the house, but she meant to say the podcast office space that we have.
Yes.
I'm kidding. Okay. So you know what you just mentioned, So I'm curious if you want to share what you share about that. Like so to repeat it, cultivating gratitude and joy, letting go of scarcity and fear of the dark. And then you said, oh my gosh, I read this chapter. And then all of a sudden I realized, no, it is good. Or I don't know how you want to characterize it.
Yeah. Cause I actually remember a poem or a quote that I had read many years ago. And I think it pertains to a person. but it still applies. And it said it is better to have loved and lost than to have never have loved at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I always believed that, and I always, felt that to be totally true. And then after Buttercup just passed, part of me was like, God, this hurts so much. Maybe even when people say, oh, do you think you'll ever get another dog? I'm like, I don't even know. Like, ask me in a while, because I'm still hurting. But she did bring us so much joy. Like, she did. And so in this particular guidepost, it did talk about, in one of the bullet points she writes, I'd rather not be joyful than have to wait for the other shoe to drop. And so I really appreciated reading this, because it did, like, through all the sadness that I'm feeling right now, I know that I still laugh and remember all the great memories that Buttercup brought to our lives. And I feel like that with everything. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather have a joyful heart for things that we experience or we have or we feel, versus thinking, oh, I don't ever want to be in pain, so I don't want to experience joy.
It's so
if
funny,
that makes sense.
Totally, because I think dogs are a great example of it, because when you get a dog, it's not going to live forever.
Right.
It's that dog is either going to die naturally or it's going to die due to an accident, or you having to put the dog down for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so outside of you getting the dog when you're 90, there's a very good chance of that dog, of you outliving the dog.
Of course.
And so you are buying, you're getting your free one, whatever you're doing, but you're getting that dog, and you're knowing that at the same time that it's going to bring you great joy, you also know that you're going to experience pain and hurt. And so it's just, it's something very unique. We could transfer that over to, because I think dogs are very much a part of a family, a part of, the system, and the dynamic of the family and all that. But at the same time, obviously people are going to be a bigger part of that system and permanent. And it's very difficult when we lose somebody. But it's interesting that you bring it up, because we might have touched on this in previous podcasts, but one of the things that I think is fascinating is that, I know our dad has he has multiple reasons, and some of them are very, very legit, meaning they're older. He's afraid of having a dog around the house because they could trip. That's
but his major reason is he doesn't want to feel the hurt again.
He doesn't want to feel the hurt.
Yeah.
And yet it's so funny, because he's the one where the dog just sits on the lap and then loves it. And he's overly concerned about it, because he treats it not just like it's like those dogs that have lived with mom and dad have been treated, really, really well, because he doesn't like to discipline the dog. He likes to just totally give the dog.
Well, he didn't like
to
discipline us really either.
No,
to be honest.
that's true. That's true.
But no, it's very true that that dog is going to obviously
provide
so much joy, but then there's that pain that comes with it when they pass.
Yeah. And so the thing that's interesting, though, in regards to the guidepost is the idea for us to, by the way, one of the things we really want you guys to know is that we're highlighting things that hit us. It's not a book report. So
right.
please read it. And then if you have questions or comments, and we would love to hear that, and we'll even put it inside. We'll mention it when we can.
Yeah.
So, because we would like to.
Well, I think that this was a really good one for me to read today, but to the point of the actual guidepost, it was talking about happiness versus joy. Being happy
that's
versus
what I was
joy.
Yeah. Keep going.
No. So that's why I really, it just resonated with me, because, bringing back having your pet, like, they do actually bring you so much joy, like genuine feelings, like, and she relates it to a spiritual feeling that you have within you. But, then there's just this happiness, which usually is a circumstance type of situation.
Yeah, I love this definition, which I am going to read, just because I think this is huge, because people will talk about joy versus happiness. And it's an interesting definition. So this is what Adela Rogers St. John said. Joy seems to me a step beyond happiness. Happiness is a sort of atmosphere you can live in sometimes when you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Joy is a light that fills you with hope and faith and love. And so the idea is happiness is brief. Happiness is not something that you're not happy when you found out your dog died. That's just all there is to it. But that does not mean that joy has to completely escape you and who you are and your family and
100%,
everything.
Yeah.
Joy can still be in the room, but at the same time that you're grieving the loss.
Right.
And whereas happiness is more like, hey, the Chiefs won. By the way, did you know the Chiefs won?
I did. We watched the game. I actually watched a football game.
So we're referencing the AFC Championship. The Super Bowl is a couple weeks away. So
no, but I liked the comparison of like the circumstantial, because you think about, oh, I'm so happy that I'm going to a birthday party. I'm so happy that, I was able to get a free coffee at Starbucks. You know what I mean? But joy is a different, it's an actual feeling. And it's also, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, because I actually read part of it pre Buttercup passing and then a little bit after. But doesn't she say that joy is also something that needs to be practiced?
That's gratitude.
Gratitude. Well,
yeah, for sure. And the idea was, and so then she goes into, and we're not going to get into the details of the book again, but the big thing is she started to identify, this is Brene Brown's thing. She does not tell you what to do. She tells you what people have done who exhibit the behaviors that we all want. And so the people that are lived with this joy, all of them had in common the idea of gratitude.
Yes.
And a practice.
Yeah, and a practice. Because okay, now it's all coming back to me as I'm thinking, because she did talk about, like, she related it to practicing yoga.
Yeah.
And then she'd say, well, I had yoga outfits. I bought, I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly what she said, but I had the yoga outfits. I have the yoga mat, I wanted to do yoga. And so
what it had to do with was she was saying is, I have the attitude of yoga. And a ton of people will say, I have the attitude of gratitude.
Right.
And she's saying, I have the attitude of yoga, but if you told me to do a downward dog, which I think that's something,
right,
I couldn't do it.
Right, because she said, I did not practice yoga.
Exactly.
I had yoga clothes, I had the yoga, mat, whatever. I did not practice yoga, so therefore, I had an attitude of yoga, but I wasn't practicing it. And that very much goes into practicing gratitude, because you can say you have an attitude of gratitude, but if you're not actually implementing gratitude by practicing it, and I think you and I have talked about this obviously in previous podcasts, that we wake up and journal, or we talk to ourselves about things that we're grateful for. You think about when you wake up in the morning, she also goes on to say, and I think this is many of us, I've talked to many friends that say this, that are just like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep. Oh my gosh, I should have went to bed earlier. Oh my gosh, my back hurts. And it's such a negative note, you know? And so I did do that before. I really did. And then I switched it it's been a few years now, where I just say, okay, I need to think of something I'm grateful for before I put my foot down, because I want to wake up on a positive note. I want to get up on a positive.
And that's the key thing that I appreciated. And I recognize this in my own life. I've told you guys that I do a 12-step thing. And one of the things that I do is I call a friend of mine every morning, and we go through a few things. But the very last thing that we say is we exchange a gratitude. And the gratitude is for the 24 hours before. It's not like I'm thankful for, that I have this, I was able to purchase this home, even though I am thankful for it, but that was 8 years ago or 9, whenever it was. The idea is what are you grateful for? What do you look into your soul, look into whatever it is, and say, what is it that you're grateful for? Now, sometimes I've had bad, quote unquote, bad days. I don't even like that term, but I've had days where I went, ugh, I'm glad it's over. And so sometimes the gratitude for me is
hard to find.
Or I just say, I'm grateful it's over.
Sure.
I'm grateful I got through it.
Sure.
I'm grateful I got through that day.
Yeah.
I'm grateful now that, I get to have a different light.
Yeah.
But the point is, we just bought a car. We mentioned that a couple months ago. And if you're, when you buy a new car, I don't know if this is the case for you, but have you ever dreamed of buying a new car?
dreamed?
Yeah, like thought about. Have you ever dreamed about buying a new, like you want a new car, you want to get a car?
I mean, yeah, yeah.
You think about it. I want a whatever you want. Okay, so you want this SUV thing or whatever it is. Have you noticed that when you start dreaming about it, that you see it everywhere?
Oh my gosh, yeah, you're right.
All of a sudden, it seems
you're
like,
right. Okay, now I understand what you're saying because I used to want the Acura TL, and it was everywhere all of a sudden.
Yeah, and so you're
everywhere.
like, what happened? Did everybody just all of a sudden
go buy it? Yeah. They're like, we're going to show you. Yeah,
exactly. And the truth is obviously those cars were always there.
Yeah,
but now you're attuned to it.
Yes,
and I really think that's the same thing with gratitude. Is until you have a practice of it, you don't see everything that you can be grateful for. But when you start going, I'm going to be grateful, the next thing you know, you see it all over the place, and you're grateful for. I say to Patty, I've always been grateful for my wife. We've always, other than 1 year when I really had a bad year, but we've always had a very good marriage. I've been incredibly thankful for everything she does and the person that she is and all this stuff. And now I find myself just thanking her all the time for little things.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah,
but
I don't think she's changed per se.
No,
I just all of a sudden notice it.
But that's so true because, a lot of, and I think I told you this before, I think a lot of things and I don't verbally say it. Like I might even, and this is, kind of off the subject, but still, I'm going to get to my point. Like if I see somebody and I like their shoes, they walk by me and, if I'm at work, I'm like, oh, she has really cute shoes on. And I just let it go. Why didn't I look at her and say, oh my gosh, those are so cute. Yeah.
I know why I wouldn't say it, but I.
No, but I'm just saying I think things. So, and that goes to show like how you just said that about Patty. Like for me with Peter, I totally appreciate things he does around the house when he does things around the house or whatever it is. But I think it. I'm like, oh, I'm so thankful he did the dishes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do I say, Peter, thank you for doing the dishes? No. I mean, I'm trying to get in the habit. In fact, this morning I noticed he did the dishes because I had fallen asleep last night and I was like, oh my gosh. And I sent him a text, thank you so much for doing the dishes. And it's like, but I absolutely agree with you. The more you practice it, the more it becomes like a second nature to do it, the easier it becomes. And it's not like you have to sit there and go, I want to go to bed saying something great I'm grateful for. And I can't figure it out. I can't find it because it just suddenly becomes like a part of you.
It's a part of you. And it is sometimes hard. There are rough days, of course, but I think the thing that's interesting is that as we get in the practice, and so what does a practice look like? I told you my practice is talking to this person, but a practice is journaling, writing things down. You could just write it down. It could be what you just said. Before I take my head off the pillow, I say one thing that I'm grateful for what's coming up in the day, what happened yesterday.
Yeah, because for me, was easier because I did tell myself every morning to journal and then I would get sidetracked or I was running late for the gym or whatever it was. And I'm just like, okay, I'll do it later. And I didn't. So it ended up becoming more before my foot hits the ground. I need to think of something or say something.
And that's the key thing here. It has nothing to do with the actual practice. It has to do with the fact that it is intentional and it's something that you're doing. And what happens, or at least happened to me, I should say, is my whole attitude started changing because all of a sudden I'm looking for the positive in things rather than the negative. And it's not like, what's interesting is that some people might be listening and you might be thinking, well, that's your personality. That's the way you are and you're upbeat. And I think in general, I have been an energetic person, but I have not been always a positive. I could try and find it and stuff, but it's I'm different.
People can say that, like it's because it's in your nature. It's in, whatever. I mean, I don't know, but I can speak, I'm talking to Peter about Peter a lot, but no, he actually, and he'll admit this, that he was always on the negative. He was also very cynical. And we talked about it over a couple of years, just like, everything's on the negative side. Everything's, he was always that person. I don't like you until you prove that you're likable, and I'm opposite. I like everyone until you prove that you're not likable. And even then I'm going to give you 55 chances, but he'll admit this to you. But so he said, I don't like this about myself. I'm going to change it. And he practiced changing it. Like it does take time to get out of that habit of being, that type of person or whatever you want to call it, have that personality, if you will. But, so I think anybody is capable of making positive changes.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is fascinating is that she mentions here, and I highlighted it a lot because I thought this is really fascinating. A lot of people think and it would make sense that the opposite of happiness or the opposite of joy is sadness, right? That's what you would kind of go, well, that makes sense, right? And this woman, who I'm not going to even try to say her name,
Right.
but she explains that in her studies, the opposite of sadness, the opposite of joy is not sadness, but fear.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really fascinating to hear, because when you really, the idea that she was going with was when you're talking about the shoe that dropped, the idea is every single time somebody is experiencing a joyful moment, they're waiting for the shoe to drop. It's like, well, this can't be that good. This is not going to be that good. And so there's always a negative to it. So, okay, well, you know what? I got the new car. Well, we're just going to get an accident. It's just going to break. It's just, and it's like, there's always something. Well, what about the new job? Well, I'm probably not going to like my boss.
Yeah.
And it's already, I don't like the hours.
Well, I have a good, I keep hitting this and I have lip gloss on. I have a good example of that, because when I read this, I even made a note about it, that I had several miscarriages before I had Nicole, and going through, 7 to be exact. And so when I got pregnant for Nicole, I literally, every time I went to the bathroom, checked to see if there was blood. Any little thing that I could feel in my stomach, I was like, oh, I'm starting to cramp. I'm going to lose her. Did I feel joyful during that pregnancy? Probably not as much as I should have or could have,
right,
because I was waiting for that shoe to drop.
Right.
And, granted, I'm sure many people that have maybe experienced this miscarriages know that when you do have a viable pregnancy, that there's always that fear.
For sure.
But it was very hard. And again, even once I had her, I was like, okay. Then she had jaundice, and they said she had to stay in the hospital a day or two after. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm not going home without this baby. I'm like, it was just, so it was like one thing after another, where I was just not experiencing the joy that I wanted to have with her.
Well, I think her example was amazing too. Actually, I don't know if it's in this book or another. I just blanked out. But she said, it's amazing how, and I remember this, that I could be looking over my daughters and just thinking, oh my gosh, this is so totally amazing, and be so grateful and so full of joy that this person's in our life now, and walk away and seriously say to myself, oh my God, I hope she doesn't die.
Yeah. I hope she doesn't get in an accident or whatever.
Or
I remember that.
SIDS, or she gets, something happens, and it's kind of like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
It's like, why can't you maintain?
Yeah.
And it's that whole idea of foreboding joy, where we're constantly saying, I can't really live in joyfulness. I can't totally live in that thing because I'm fearing what potentially can happen. So like we talked about the dog, going back to the dog, it's kind of like, well, I'm not going to enjoy this dog because it's just going to die. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to do that. And then rather than saying, no, I'm going to enjoy the dog and I'm going to enjoy the life that I have, and I'm going to enjoy the car, and I'm going to enjoy my kids, and I'm going to enjoy. And, your situation, 7 miscarriages is a big deal. And so there's one thing to say, okay, there's a practical aspect of, am I healthy? Is all this stuff going to happen? I think when it really becomes an issue is when it's like you don't even enjoy your baby ever.
Well, no, for sure. And I
like,
did. And, don't get me wrong. I absolutely loved all 3 of my pregnancies. Like, I was never that person that didn't like a pregnancy. Like, I was just living in a little bit of a fear with Nicole.
Of course,
but every time, she kicked or moved, oh my gosh, the joy that brought me. You know what I mean? But so I can totally relate to her comparing when you don't have the joy, it's more of a fear, not just because you're unhappy.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the thing for me that I really get out of this, and it really resonated me with the whole idea of gratitude, because of the fact that I recognize so many times in my life. I think I have people, and I've had this happen before, where people contact me and they'll suffice it to say, you probably heard this. People go, it's going to be a crappy day. It's going to be a crappy day. And it's like, they just feel like that. They wake up on the quote unquote wrong side of the bed, and it's like, it's just going to be a crappy day. And my thought is,
well, yeah, it's
why don't choose to have a good day?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's the same day.
Right.
They're all 24 hours,
Right.
whether you believe it or not.
Right.
They're all the same length.
Right.
And literally you can choose to author whatever you're going to do that day, be the author of it, write it, you know, say, I'm going to make this happen. Or you could be the victim of whatever's happening and go, you know what? I'm going to let everything control me and my mood and my thoughts and everything. And ultimately what it leads to when we're living a life like that is it's just way more painful. I don't think we experience
and the
joy.
more you do that, the more you can't get out of that funk. It's like you got to break that cycle. I did like one of the little things that she said, the dark does not destroy the light. It defines it. It's the fear of the dark that casts our joy into the shadows. So I really liked that because I don't think she was specifically talking about being
Dark
in the
light.
dark.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the fear of that dark place that really...
and darkness it represents emptiness to me. A lot of times it's obviously, for most people, there's some fear in it. I mean, in this, I'll never forget the first time I ever went... what's that called? Snorkeling. And it was in Hawaii. And if you're at least where I was at, I went snorkeling and it was like, you know, it's like 3 feet, 5 feet, 7 feet, 20 feet. And then all of a sudden it just drops.
Yeah.
It just drops.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I was a person who was afraid of the ocean nor, you know, of heights. But I couldn't see the bottom, and it was black.
Right.
And this water's clear. And I am not kidding you, man. I just went into this. I was like, oh, nope, going back. I don't know what's coming up here. But there was no reason for me to be fearful.
Right.
But it just totally sunk everything out.
Yeah.
And I think what's sad for me is I think some people live there every morning waking up, and that's what they see.
They don't want to just...
That's what they see. They see emptiness. They see pain. They see fear. They see what's going to happen, and they're constantly second guessing decisions and question, you know, every single thing. And ultimately, what's interesting about that is we cannot experience all the happiness and joy if we're living in fear.
Right.
It's just not possible.
And to another point here, when she talks about, you know, joy doesn't have joy. I loved what she said about the memories that, because she does, like Benny, you just said, she doesn't just like write these things. She does so much research and chatting with people and taking, you know, polls, if you will. Like, so she was talking about a group of people that had talked about, well, it was actually scarcity. But then anyway, she says the memories that they held most sacred were the ordinary, everyday moments. Yeah. So things that, you know, it's, some people say, you know, oh, it's just meaningless, but it could be just the simplest things that bring you joy. And, you know, when you think about people, when she talked about people, I read it more as like, you know, maybe on your deathbed kind of thing. What were the things that brought you joy? And they were always just the most simple things in someone's life. And it's so true. Like when I think about Buttercup, I'm not thinking, oh my gosh, I remember when we took her to Big Bear, and you know, I remember
she did this thing or that thing.
Yeah,
that was so funny
we
and
were at
laughed.
the beach, and when we would take her walking or whatever the case, like it was like, I love that she sat on my lap every night before we went to bed. You know what I mean? So it's like, and when you think about your people, your group, your tribe, you know, what is it that they do in your life that bring you joy? And it's not, oh, my husband took me to Mastro's for dinner, or he took me to Europe, or whatever. It's the really simple things.
So have you ever seen...
he always tells me he loves me and gives me a kiss every... Do you know what I'm saying? Like
what you just said. See, so when I was a youth pastor 174 years ago, there was a kid who, she was 16, I think, and her dad died. And he was our age. Oh, God. Maybe younger. And died of a heart attack. And I don't know, it was a few weeks later, and I had a good relationship with her, but I asked her, and I know this is a weird question to ask, but I did. I said, "What do you miss most about your dad?" Because I wanted her to have the permission to talk to me about her dad, but at the same time, she certainly didn't have to.
Sure.
And she goes, "You know what I miss is him. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry." She said, I would be walking up the stairs and he'd go, Helen, Helen, I love you.
Aww.
And then she would look at me and go, I know. And then he would start walking. She would walk a little more and he'd go, Helen. I love you. And he'd keep doing it. It would piss her off.
I know.
And then
she misses that.
And then she goes,
but
this
you know
is what I
what's
miss the most.
That's so funny that you said that, because there's so many times like I get into bed and I just say the most wacky things to Peter because I just get in this weird place.
I've never said anything wacky. Ask everybody.
No, but I'm like, he always says, like, gosh, what happens to you like when you're this exhausted that you go to this place where you talk a lot and you say these weird things, and he's like, okay, just go to sleep, just go to sleep, just go to sleep. And I'm like, why? And I start getting in a giggle, and then I go, you're gonna miss this when I die. He goes, no, I'm not, but I bet he will.
Oh, yes, he will. Well, it's funny because you know, my favorite movie in the entire world is what is Good Will Hunting. Thank you. I always forget the name.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, it's 100 years old, and what in the world are you doing? It's worse than not seeing Apollo 13. So, okay. But anyway, Robin Williams is a shrink. And what's fascinating in it is he gets into, Matt Damon asks him what he missed about his wife. And he says, you know, the things that I miss about my wife is the things that only I knew. You know, she would snore, she'd fart in bed, she would, and he just named a bunch of different little things. And I just thought it's fascinating because it is true. It's the things that make that relationship so personal. You know, there's the giddy, stupid things that you might say. And actually, I probably heard you say some of those things, but it might be after a drink or two. But regardless, I've certainly said things I've certainly said things in bad states, but even in my normal states, I've said things to Patty that you know,
only
I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't say in general.
Sure.
And just being able to be vulnerable with somebody and being who you really truly are, and that person, you know, sometimes people will ask me, are we even on the same subject anymore? I'm so sorry. But sometimes people will ask me what I love about, what is it about Patty that I like? I've had that. I had not recently, but definitely over the years. What is it that you like? The number one thing that I say always is she likes me. And I know that sounds weird because somebody's gonna say, well, why'd she like you? And it doesn't matter. What matters now is it's for some reason she loves me. I don't understand it because she certainly has reason not to.
Because you're unlikable.
It's true that I'm unlikable, but it's the body. Hey, what did your friend say at Starbucks? Okay, I'm moving on. Anyway, all I can say is that I'm just joking. Anyway, but what I can tell you is that that's something that for me, I'm grateful for. And it's every single little thing like that, all those little tiny, just those moments and the stuff that we can only appreciate. Those are the things that we remember. Even in our relationship, I mean, one day you're going to die. You're way older than me. So, so it's like, what am I going to remember? Am I going to remember, oh my gosh, I remember the podcast moments? Maybe, but honestly, I think it's going to be more of the other stuff that I'm going to remember and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Valerie Lynn, we've done it again where I thought we'd finished earlier.
Yeah. Well, this is a good topic.
I know it is a good topic.
I know. And I just feel like if you're listening to this, I really think that the bottom line with all of this is to really truly be joyful. We need to start practicing gratitude and being aware of it and
recognizing scarcity. You know, here's the three things. She always ends the chapters with these it calls dig deep. And so the first one is get deliberate.
Yes.
When I'm flooded with fear and scarcity, I try to call forward joy and sufficiency by acknowledging the fear, then transforming it into gratitude. I say this out loud. I say the following out loud. I'm feeling vulnerable. That's okay. I'm so grateful for blank. Doing this has absolutely increased my capacity for joy.
And then the next thing in the dig deep is get inspired. I'm so inspired by the daily doses of joy that happen in those ordinary moments, like walking my kids home from school, jumping on the trampoline, and sharing family meals. Acknowledging these moments are really what life is about, and it's changed my outlook on work, family, and success.
And the last is get going. From taking turns being thankful during grace to more creative projects like creating a jar to keep gratitude notes in, we're making wholeheartedness a family affair. What a great name for a podcast. So being wholehearted. So Next week, guys, we're going to be on Guidepost number 5, cultivating intuition and trusting faith, letting go of the need for certainty. So that would be great.
That is faith.
So
all right,
we're glad you're with us, folks. I am at Benny Gonzalez on Instagram. Would love to hear from you. Share this podcast if you are even remotely interested in like letting other people know. We would like to influence as many people as we can.
Sure. And I'm Valerie over at A Daily Dose of Cocoa.
Yay. So we're very glad you guys are
Thank
with us.
you for all of you.
And thank you, Iggy
Meister.
The Iggy Meister for keeping the sound, keeping the video. And so if you want to follow us, Spotify and YouTube, we'd love to have you guys comment and subscribe. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Ciao.